He said I was too emotional for management. My coffee went cold before my tears did. That's the day I started buying his building. My name's Helen. I'm 45 years old, and this is the story of how silence became my revenge. That morning, I was sitting in the glass conference room of Sherridan Cole Financial, the company where I'd given 15 years of my life. 15. I started there at 29, bright-eyed, still believing in fairness and teamwork. Back then, I thought hard work protected you. Turns out, hard work just makes your betrayal look prettier. "Let's keep this professional," my boss, Mark, said. His tie was the color of expensive guilt. "We're restructuring." I remember the sound of the AC humming above us. I remember how his assistant, Kara, couldn't look me in the eye. "Restructuring?" I asked. "Or replacing?" He exhaled. "Helen, you're talented. Everyone knows that, but you get too emotional. Leadership requires detachment." Too emotional. That's what men say when your fire burns brighter than their comfort zone. I didn't argue. Didn't cry. I just stared at the company logo printed on that glossy wall, those 2 silver letters I'd polished with my overtime. When he slid the termination packet toward me, I saw the reflection of my own steady hands on that glass table. "I understand," I said. He blinked, surprised. He expected a scene, a breakdown. What he got was silence. That silence carried me home like a heavy coat. I didn't turn on music, didn't call my sister. I just sat at my kitchen table, looking at the pink slip beside my coffee mug. The mug said, "Boss Lady." Irony can't read, but it sure can laugh. Later that evening, my sister Denise came over. She had that "I told you so" energy already bubbling under her lipstick. "Girl, I've been saying it for years," she sighed, setting her purse down. "You loyal to people who ain't loyal to you." I didn't respond. She poured herself a glass of wine like she owned the house. "Maybe it's for the best," she said. "You can finally help me with my boutique idea. We could run something together." We. Denise loved that word when it involved my money. I just smiled faintly and said, "We'll see." Because I already knew. She wasn't talking partnership. She was talking sponsorship. A week later, Mama passed. Peacefully, thank God. But it cracked something deep inside me. The world slowed down to funeral black and stale casseroles. After the service, Denise cornered me near the church steps. Her voice dropped low like secrets were savings accounts. "Listen, Helen," she said. "Mama left that property, right? The one on Beechwood?" I nodded. "Well, she told me years ago she wanted me to have it. You got the house, I should get the property." My grief froze. "That's not what the will said." She folded her arms. "Maybe not in writing, but Mama talked about fairness." Fairness. Another pretty word that hides greed. I didn't argue. I just said, "We'll handle it properly." But Denise didn't wait for properly. She moved into that property like she owned it, changed the locks, painted the walls, even posted on Facebook about her new place. The comments were full of congratulations. Mine were full of silence. That's when I learned 2 things. One, family will betray you softer, but deeper. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be earned. I didn't fight her, didn't call the lawyer. I let her feel safe. Because when people think they've won, they stop watching their back. 3 months later, I started a small side business. Candles. Not glamorous, not big money. Just me, my kitchen, and the quiet hum of purpose. I called it Soul Flame. Each candle had a story. Forgiveness, stillness, rise. It was therapy in wax. I started selling them on Etsy, then at weekend markets. People connected to the names, the energy. Before long, my living room turned into a shipping station. Meanwhile, Denise kept posting pictures of her boss lifestyle from Mama's old property. Hashtags like independent woman and generational wealth. Funny thing, the boutique she bragged about never opened. One afternoon, I got a message from a woman named Carmen. She was a retail buyer from a wellness chain. She said, "We'd like to place an order for your candles, wholesale." I thought it was a scam until the deposit hit my account. $10,000. That's when I lit a candle called Grace. From that moment on, I stopped chasing fairness and started studying leverage. Every night I'd stay up watching business tutorials, reading real estate blogs, learning how money moved quietly while people argued loudly. By year 2, Soul Flame was in 6 stores. By year 3, I hired 2 employees, and by year 4, I made my first down payment on the old Beechwood property. Yeah, the same one Denise stole. Turns out she'd defaulted on the taxes, never changed the deed properly, so when the county listed it, I bought it anonymously through an LLC. 2 weeks later, she got an eviction notice, signed by her own sister's company. She called me crying. "Helen, somebody trying to take my house." I said softly, "That's terrible, sis. You want me to look into it?" The silence on the other end told me she heard the echo of her own karma. She moved out that month. I didn't even step foot inside till the locks changed. When I did, the house smelled like betrayal and lemon cleaner. I stood in the middle of the empty living room and whispered, "Mama, I kept it safe." But the story didn't end there. Because the same week I closed on Beechwood, I saw a headline online: Sherridan Cole Financial expanding into Southside District. Southside, that's where Beechwood sat. Guess who sold them their new office space? My LLC. Mark, my old boss, walked into my property one bright Friday morning for their first day of setup. He didn't recognize me at first. 5 years, and success will do that. "Excuse me," he said, seeing me by the front desk. "Are you the landlord rep?" I smiled. "Something like that." When he realized who I was, his face turned the color of unfiled taxes. "Helen?" "In the flesh," I said. "Welcome to your new home. Rent's due on the 1st. He cleared his throat. You're the owner?" "Of this building, yes." He nodded slowly, processing humiliation in real time. "Well," he said, forcing a smile, "congratulations." I extended my hand. "Thank you. Took me a while to learn that 2 emotional women make great investors." He laughed awkwardly, then walked away, his pride limping behind him. That night, I visited Mama's grave, laid one of my candles beside her name. Stillness. "I did it, Mama," I whispered, "and I didn't even have to raise my voice." The wind moved through the trees like applause. You ever notice how peace don't feel real until you've earned it? That first night after I bought the company's new building, I slept like a child again. No nightmares, no late-night overthinking, no replaying conversations that used to haunt me. Just stillness, clean and earned. But peace don't mean still. See, once you take back your power, life starts testing if you'll give it away again. And my next test came wrapped in family. Denise showed up 3 months later. No call, no text, just a knock on my glass door. The one with Soul Flame Wellness & Co. and written in gold cursive. I was in a meeting with my assistant, Jada. She peeked through the blinds and whispered, "Miss Helen, there's a lady outside saying she's your sister." I felt my pulse slow. That name, sister, it hit like an old wound that pretended to heal. "Tell her I'll be out in 5, I said. When I stepped into the lobby, Denise was standing there in her red coat, fake confidence stitched between every button. Her eyes scanned the space like she was trying to find the version of me she remembered, the one she could guilt trip. "Wow," she said softly. "You really did it, huh?" I smiled politely. "Good to see you, too." She gave a half laugh. "You own all this." "I built it," I corrected. Her lips tightened. "You always had that tone." I raised an eyebrow. "You always heard it wrong." We sat down in my office. She crossed her legs. I crossed my patience. "So what brings you here?" I asked. She took a deep breath, eyes glistening just enough to make me cautious. "I need help." "Of course." She explained her boutique failed, her savings were gone, and she was 2 months behind on rent. "I just need a small loan," she said. "I'll pay you back. Promise." I watched her face, not her words. Her tone sounded like that day on the church steps, rehearsed righteousness. "How much you need?" I asked. She hesitated. 10,000. The same amount Carmen had first paid me for candles, poetic symmetry, or divine humor. I didn't answer right away. I looked out the window, down at the street I once walked in borrowed heels just to look like I belonged somewhere. "Denise," I said softly, "do you remember Mama's will?" Her eyes flickered. "Don't start that again." "I'm not. I just need you to remember what Mama used to say." She frowned. "What?" I turned back to her. "You can't plant lies and expect flowers." The silence that followed felt heavy enough to bend light. "I'm not lying," she muttered. "I know," I said. "You're just living with the harvest." She stood up, voice sharp. "You think you better than me now?" I stood too. "No, Denise, I just finally learned not to let guilt sign my checks." She glared. "You cold." I smiled softly. "No, I'm calm." Then I walked her to the door. She didn't say goodbye. She just left the scent of bitterness behind. Later that week, I found out Denise had gone to Mark, yes, my old boss, asking for a consulting opportunity. Apparently, she mentioned being my sister, hoping that connection would open doors. It did, just not the ones she expected. Mark called me personally. "Hey, Helen, small world," he said. "Your sister came by today." I leaned back in my chair. "Oh?" He chuckled. "Yeah. Said she wanted to do PR work for us. Dropped your name like a golden key." I smiled. "What did you tell her?" "I told her I'd have to run it by the owner," he said, pausing. "Didn't realize that was you." "Appreciate that," I said. "Let me handle it from here." That night, I texted Denise. "Heard you had a meeting with my tenant. Hope it went well." No reply. But the next morning, she posted something on Facebook. "People love to act humble till you outshine them." I didn't respond. Silence was still my sharpest weapon. 6 months later, business exploded. Soul Flame expanded into body oils, affirmation journals, and even a podcast called Lightwork with Helen Cole. Funny how people who said you were too emotional start calling you authentic once emotion pays rent. I got featured in a local magazine, From Fired to CEO. Mark saw it. I know he did because that same week he sent me an email titled, "Potential Collaboration." I opened it. "Helen, your growth is inspiring. Sherridan Cole is rebranding, and we'd love to include your candles in our wellness initiative. Let's discuss a partnership." I laughed so hard Jada thought I was crying. Partnership. That word again. I wrote back, "Appreciate the thought, Mark. Unfortunately, Soul Flame doesn't partner with companies that treat compassion as liability. Best of luck with your rebrand." Hit send. Sat back. Lit a candle called Boundaries. A week later, I was driving home when I passed Beechwood. Denise was standing outside talking to some movers. Turns out she'd rented the old place after I remodeled it. She didn't even know she was paying me rent. Life's full of surprises like that. I parked across the street, unseen behind tinted glass. Watched her supervise boxes labeled New Beginning. She laughed with the movers. That big fake laugh she used when she was trying to look unbothered. I didn't feel spite, just symmetry. Later that night, I found an old voice memo Mama had left on my phone. Her voice soft but steady. "Baby, don't let this world make you bitter. Let it make you wiser. Let it make you build something that can't be taken." I sat there listening in the dark, tears slipping quiet, because that's exactly what I'd done. I built something that couldn't be taken, not by bosses, not by sisters, not even by time. 2 weeks after that, I got invited to a women's leadership conference. The keynote speaker dropped out last minute, and they wanted me to step in. I almost said no, but something in me said go. The theme was resilience in modern women. When I walked onto that stage, I looked out at 200 faces, tired, beautiful, hopeful. I took a breath. "I used to think strength meant proving people wrong," I said. "Now I know it means staying soft in a hard world." Silence. then nods, then tears. I was fired for being too emotional, I continued. Now my emotions employ people. Applause rose like thunder. Somewhere inside, the little girl who used to whisper, "One day," finally exhaled. Afterward, a woman came up to me. Early 30s, nervous smile. "Miss Cole," she said, "my boss told me the same thing last month, that I was too emotional for management. I thought about quitting everything." I took her hand. "Don't quit," I said. "Just redirect. Don't let rejection end your story. Let it edit it." She nodded, eyes shining. "Thank you." As she walked away, I felt something shift. Maybe revenge wasn't the point anymore. Maybe peace was the new power. That night, I lit one last candle, legacy. And for the first time, I realized my story wasn't about what they did to me. It was about what I built in spite of it. Still, karma wasn't done making art out of irony, because the next morning I got an offer to buy Sherridan Cole outright. Turns out, they were drowning in debt. The buyer they reached out to? My investment firm, the same LLC that owned their building. Sometimes, silence doesn't just heal, it collects interest. When the email came through, I thought it was spam. Subject line, "Acquisition Proposal, Sherridan Cole Financial." I blinked twice, reread it. Then once more just to taste the irony on my tongue. 5 years earlier, that name meant heartbreak. Now it looked like opportunity. Wearing my ex-boss's logo, like borrowed jewelry. The email was from a mergers consultant named Andre Willis. His tone was polite, careful, like he didn't yet realize I was the woman his client had once humiliated. "Ms. Cole, our client is interested in negotiating a sale. You've been identified as a potential acquirer based on your company's growth portfolio. Would you be open to a meeting?" I almost laughed out loud. Would I be open? Honey, I'd been open since the day they told me I was too emotional for management. I replied one line, "Yes, let's schedule it." Then I lit a candle named Poise, because revenge might be sweet, but professionalism is divine. A week later, we met at the Regency Hotel downtown. Andre wore the standard consultant uniform, navy suit, practice smile, watch worth more than sincerity. He gestured for me to sit. "Pleasure to finally meet, Miss Cole. I've heard a lot about your business trajectory." "I bet you have," I said, setting my folder down. He smiled. "Our client's been struggling with liquidity. They're considering full acquisition." I leaned forward. "And who exactly is your client?" He cleared his throat. "Sherridan Cole Financial." I smiled slow. "Ah, my old stomping ground." His eyebrows lifted. "Really? You worked there?" "Once upon a layoff," I said. He chuckled nervously, unaware he was sitting across from their poetic justice. 3 days later, I walked into the same conference room I'd been fired in. Different lighting, same ghosts. Mark was already there. He looked older, grayer hair, thinner smile. Success had clearly divorced him. "Helen," he stammered, "you're the interested buyer?" I nodded. "Surprise." He tried to play it cool. "Well, life's full of circles, huh?" "Mm-hmm," I said, some sharper than others. They presented their books, their forecasts, their polite desperation. Revenue was down 40%. 2 senior partners had left. The company name was surviving on nostalgia, not numbers. When the presentation ended, Mark cleared his throat. "We're asking for $2.4 million for full acquisition." I smiled. "How about 1.8 and a rebranding clause?" He frowned. "Rebranding?" "Yes, the company name changes to Cole and Partners Financial." His jaw tightened. "That's non-negotiable." Silence filled the room like smoke. Andre looked between us, realizing there was history under the surface. "Shall we take a recess?" he offered. "No need," I said. "He knows what this is." Mark sighed, rubbing his temples. "You're really enjoying this, aren't you?" "Enjoying?" I said softly. "No. Completing." He looked at me for a long second. Then he laughed, tired, hollow. "You always were different." "Still am," I said. "But now I own the table they fire people from." 2 months later, Cole Partners Financial was official. The papers were signed. The deal closed. And for the first time in my life, I didn't just rewrite my story. I bought the whole publishing house. When the new sign went up outside, I stood across the street watching it shimmer in the morning sun. It wasn't just metal and font. It was forgiveness with interest. At the reopening ceremony, local press came. Reporters asked me the same recycled questions. What inspired this acquisition? How does it feel to own the company that once let you go? I smiled for the cameras. Growth isn't about revenge, I said. It's about redemption through creation. They clapped. Mark stood quietly in the corner, pretending to check his phone. After the cameras left, I walked over. "You can stay if you'd like," I said. "We could use someone with experience." He blinked. "You'd hire me back?" "No," I said gently. "But you can lease an office. I believe in giving people space, not positions." That same week, Denise called again. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity can be louder than common sense. "Hey, sis," she said, voice sugary but nervous. "I saw your article, proud of you." I waited. There's always a but. Sure enough. "But, I was wondering if you might want to invest in something. Just a little thing I'm starting." "What kind of thing?" I asked. She hesitated. "A lifestyle brand. Candles, journals, affirmations. Kind of like what you do, but, more youthful." I leaned back in my chair, letting that irony marinate. "So," I said slowly, "you want me to fund your version of my company?" "I mean, not like that," she said quickly. "I just thought we could collaborate." I interrupted. "You know what collaboration means to me now, Denise?" She paused. "What?" "It means two people bringing equal value. And from what I remember, you only bring ideas when I bring income." She went quiet. "I wish you well," I said. Truly. But Soul Flame doesn't fund counterfeits. Then I hung up. Calmly. Cleanly. A few days later, she posted on social again. Some folks forget who helped them climb. And someone commented, "Who you talking about, Denise?" She replied, "Family." I scrolled past, smiling. Let her have the last word online. I had the last word in real life. By year's end, Soul Flame merged with Cole Partners under one umbrella, the Helen Group. We employed 87 people. I signed payroll checks with the same hand that once signed severance forms. Sometimes I'd catch myself in the mirror and whisper, "You made it, girl." Not to brag, just to remind the part of me that still flinched when someone said too emotional. Then came the gala. It was an annual Women in Business event, full of power suits and champagne smiles. I wore black velvet with gold cuffs, quiet elegance. Halfway through, I spotted a familiar face near the buffet. Denise. My heart didn't race. It just sighed. She approached slowly, holding a glass of wine. "Hey," she said, smiling like nothing ever broke between us. "You look amazing." "Thanks," I said. "You too." "I got an invite through a friend," she said quickly. "Didn't know you'd be here." "It's my event," I replied. Her smile flickered. We stood there for a moment, surrounded by laughter that didn't belong to us. Then she said, "I miss Mama." "You ever feel like she'd be disappointed in us?" I met her eyes. "Every day. But I also think she'd be proud that I learned to protect peace, not just give it." Denise's eyes softened. "I was wrong, Helen." "I know. I shouldn't have taken that property. I just wanted to feel like I had something of my own." I nodded. "We all want that. We just go about it different ways." For the first time, her apology felt real. Not perfect, but real. So I said, "Come by the office Monday. Let's talk about how you can start again, properly this time." Her eyes widened. "You'd help me?" "I'd guide you." "Help's a different word." She laughed, small but honest. "You still the same Helen." "Just richer," I said with a wink. That night, after the gala lights dimmed, I drove to Mama's old property, now my community center, the Beechwood Foundation. Inside, candles flickered along the windowsills, and children's art hung from the walls. Every month, we hosted free financial literacy classes for single mothers and small business owners. I walked through the hallway slowly, the smell of lavender and hope in the air. This was the real revenge. Not the ownership, not the money, but the legacy. Turning wounds into blueprints for someone else's freedom. When I got home, I checked my email one last time. A message waited in my inbox. Subject line: "Your story inspired me." It was from a young woman in Chicago. "Ms. Cole, I saw your interview. I got fired last month for being too emotional. I was going to give up, but now I'm starting my own business. Thank you for showing us it's possible." I smiled, typed one line back: "Keep your fire. One day, it'll light the room that tried to dim you." Then I turned off the light, letting the glow of my candle fill the room. The label read, "Still Rising." The Monday after the gala, Denise walked into my office wearing the same red coat from years ago, but this time she wore humility under it. I could tell she'd practiced her tone. "I'm not here for a handout," she said quickly. "I'm here to learn." I nodded, motioned for her to sit. "That's a start." She looked around, taking in the gold lettering on the walls, the scent of sandalwood from the diffuser, the quiet rhythm of success that filled the air. "This is beautiful," she murmured. "Mama would have loved this." I smiled. "I hope she does." We talked for an hour. She explained her dream: to create an empowerment brand for women who'd been through divorce, layoffs, and loss. Real-life women, she said. Her idea wasn't bad. It just lacked structure and honesty. I told her, "If you're serious, you'll start from the ground up, internship level. You'll shadow my product team for 6 months, unpaid. Not because I'm cheap, but because I need to know if your hunger's real." Her eyes widened. "You want me to intern?" I smiled gently. "I want you to rebuild your credibility. Every queen learns the broom before the crown." She stared for a long second, then nodded. "All right, I'll do it." That's when I knew. She'd finally hit her bottom, and sometimes that's the best foundation you can build on. The first few weeks, Denise was quiet. She watched how I ran meetings, how I negotiated contracts, how I handled suppliers who tried to lowball a woman in business. She never complained. She showed up early, left late, and every now and then I'd catch her looking at me, not with envy, but with respect. One day, while we were restocking candles, she said, "You really forgive me?" I paused. "Forgiveness ain't a feeling, sis. It's a decision you gotta remake every time your memory tries to drag you backward." She smiled faintly. "You sound like Mama." I chuckled. Guess I finally grew into her voice. Around that time, Cole and Partners started handling nonprofit portfolios. It wasn't about money anymore, it was about meaning. We sponsored grants for women starting small businesses out of their kitchens: bakers, seamstresses, candle makers, artists. Every check I signed reminded me of who I used to be, that tired woman in her kitchen with more pain than plans. But life's funny like that. Sometimes your greatest heartbreak becomes your business model. A few months in, Denise presented her first real project proposal: Rise Again Boxes. Curated self-care kits for women rebuilding their lives. Candles, journals, affirmation cards, but with her own flair. "It's beautiful," I said after reviewing it, "and it feels honest. That's rare." She blinked, surprised. "You like it?" "I do, but liking ain't enough. You'll need funding, supply chain, branding, marketing." She smiled. "I was hoping my big sister could mentor me through all that." I laughed. "Now that's a business plan I can believe in." Weeks turned into months. Her line launched under the Soul Flame umbrella. Within 3 months, it sold out twice. Customers wrote messages like, "These boxes help me get out of bed again." "I light this candle when I feel like giving up." Denise cried when she read them. "They don't even know me," she said. "They know your pain," I said. "That's enough." For the first time since Mama's funeral, I saw my sister look proud. not of what she owned, but of what she gave. Then came the letter, a legal one. It was addressed to the Helen Group. The sender, Sherridan Cole's former partner, now suing for breach of intellectual property, claiming I'd used confidential practices from my old job in my financial literacy programs. I stared at the letter, half amused, half annoyed. Mark's fingerprints were all over it. I called my lawyer. "Handle it," I said calmly. He chuckled. "Already on it. Their claim's empty." Still, I knew what this was. Not about money, about ego. Some men can't handle being outgrown by the women they underestimated. A week later, I ran into Mark at a networking event. He looked tired, or maybe karma just aged him faster. "Quite the empire you've built," he said, forced smile and all. I sipped my drink. I learned from the best mistakes. He chuckled, shaking his head. "You know, it's funny. I fired you for being too emotional, but it turns out your emotion is what makes you magnetic." I smiled. "That's because it wasn't emotion. It was empathy, and that's something they don't teach in management training." He nodded slowly. "Guess you proved your point." "I wasn't trying to," I said. "I was just trying to heal." That night, I got home and found Denise in my kitchen, cooking dinner like old times. Fried catfish, collard greens, cornbread, the holy trinity of forgiveness. "Thought you could use a real meal," she said. I laughed, sitting down. "You cooking means somebody's either pregnant or plotting." She grinned. "Neither, just grateful." We ate in silence for a bit, that good silence that feels like music. Then she said, "You ever think about Daddy?" I froze mid-bite. "Why?" "I just been wondering if we're repeating his story. You building, me chasing. He used to say success splits families." I set my fork down. "Then it's our job to prove him wrong." When she left that night, I walked through my house, quiet, candlelight flickering. I thought about how revenge had turned into renewal, how every scar I had been rebranded into strategy. People think healing is peace, but sometimes healing looks like structure. 2 months later, we hosted a joint event, the Beechwood Women's Summit. Over 400 women attended, business owners, mothers, survivors. I stood on stage looking at a sea of faces lit by possibility. 5 years ago, I said, I was fired for being too emotional. My sister took my inheritance. I lost everything except my will. The crowd went silent. But here's what I learned. When the world takes your table, build your own and make them apply to sit. Applause roared through the hall like redemption on fire. After the summit, Denise came up behind me, tears streaking her makeup. "You said that line like Mama wrote it," she whispered. "Maybe she did," I said, smiling. "Through us." We hugged, the long overdue kind that forgives generations. Later, that evening, as the crowd filtered out, I sat alone in the front row, letting the empty seats hum with energy. Then my phone buzzed. A notification from the Soul Flame page. "New comment on your latest post." It read, "Ms. Cole, I don't even know you, but your story saved my life." I exhaled, whispered, "That's all the revenge I'll ever need." I looked up at the stage, where the lights had dimmed to a soft gold. Somewhere in the shadows, I swear I heard Mama's voice again. "You did good, baby. You turned every no into a seed." And I smiled, because I finally believed her. The morning after the summit, the sun poured through my curtains like a quiet applause. I hadn't slept much. My mind was still replaying every face, every story, every tear from that event. You know how sometimes victory feels too still? Like your spirit's waiting for one more test before it rests? That was me. I'd climbed the mountain, but something in me whispered, "Don't pack up yet." At the office, Jada burst in with her usual energy. "Boss, you trending again," she laughed, waving her tablet. On the screen was a clip from my summit speech. The caption read, "The woman who bought the company that fired her." Over 1.2 million views overnight. The comments were a mix of fire and faith. This healed something in me. She's what Grace looks like in motion. Aunt Helen energy all day. I chuckled at that last one. Aunt Helen, I murmured. Guess I really am her now. By noon, every major business outlet was calling. NBC, Essence, Forbes, even a podcast out of London titled Revenge Redefined. My assistant kept asking, "You want to schedule interviews?" And I said the same thing each time, only if I can tell the truth. Because truth was my currency now, more valuable than any paycheck. That afternoon, while reviewing expansion plans, Denise walked in holding 2 cups of coffee. She set one on my desk. "I figured you'd forget to eat." "Correct assumption," I said, smiling. She sat across from me, crossing her legs. "So, how's it feel? Going viral?" I shrugged. "Like being seen without needing permission." She grinned. "Well, people seeing you means opportunity. I already got 3 offers from brands wanting to collaborate with Rise again." "That's great," I said, "but choose slow. Everybody smiles before they sell you." She nodded. "I learned that from you." "Good," I said. "Then you learning the right lessons." A knock at the door. Jada peeked in again. Miss Cole? Someone's here to see you. No appointment." I frowned. "Who?" She hesitated. "A Mr. Sherridan." The name froze the room. Mark's old partner. The other half of the company that fired me. He walked in wearing regret like a tailored suit. "Miss Cole," he said softly, extending his hand. "I'll admit, this feels strange." I didn't take his hand. Right away. Just watched him. "Strange for you, maybe," I said. "For me, it's full circle." He nodded. "I came to say congratulations. What you've built is remarkable." "Appreciate it," I said, "but I doubt you came all this way just for compliments." He sighed. "You're right. I wanted to make an offer." Denise shifted in her chair. "An offer?" He looked at me. "We're launching a new venture, women-focused entrepreneurship fund. We'd like you to lead it." I almost laughed. "You want me to lead your company's new fund after you fired me for being too emotional?" He winced. "Different times, different management." I folded my arms. "No, same spirit, same structure." He hesitated. "You could make a real difference from inside." "I already am, from the outside," I said. His jaw tensed, but he nodded slowly. "If you change your mind—" "I won't." He sighed. "Then I wish you luck." As he left, Denise whispered, "You handled that like a queen." I smiled. Queens don't argue with pawns. They just move different. A week later, the Helen Group announced a nationwide partnership with HBCUs, funding scholarships for Black women in finance, business, and creative arts. We called it Project Beechwood. It wasn't about charity. It was about generational correction. Because I knew how it felt to be the only Black woman in a boardroom full of polished arrogance, having to code switch between strength and survival. This project meant more women wouldn't have to. Then came the feature on Good Morning America. The host smiled wide, saying, "We're joined today by Helen Cole, CEO, investor, and founder of Soul Flame, whose story has inspired millions." I wore my calmest smile, but inside, I felt Mama in the room. "Ms. Cole," the host began, "what do you say to women who feel broken after betrayal?" I leaned forward. Broken ain't the end. It's the blueprint. Every empire I know started on a cracked foundation. She blinked. "That's powerful." "It's real," I said. "Revenge is temporary, but peace compounds." After the segment aired, my phone nearly exploded. Hundreds of messages, emails, partnerships, book deals. But one message stood out. It was from Mark. "Helen, I watched your interview. You were right. Compassion is leadership. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I sat there reading it twice. Then I typed back, "I forgive you, but I'm not who you fired anymore." And that was closure. Not with a bang, but with balance. Denise knocked on my office door later that night. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, "just thinking about how far we came." She smiled, stepping closer. You ever think Mama knew this would happen? Maybe not the details, I said, but she raised us like she expected us to rise. We both laughed at that, and the kind of laughter that comes from exhaustion and gratitude at the same time. Later, at home, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The sky was painted gold and gray, like endings pretending to be beginnings. I lit a candle called Full Circle. The flame danced like a heartbeat. I whispered to the air, "Lord, thank you for not giving me what I wanted. You gave me what I needed." My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video notification. A college student had uploaded a clip from the summit, my line about building your own table. It had over 10 million views. Someone commented, "She talks like she's seen storms and built mansions from the rain." I smiled. Close enough. The next morning, Denise texted me a photo, her holding a small plaque. It read, Entrepreneur of the Year, Women Rising Awards. I called her immediately. "Look at you," she laughed through tears. "You created this lane for me, Helen." "No," I said. "You just finally drove it." That evening, as I prepared my speech for another event, I found myself writing something new. Not about revenge, but about rhythm. The rhythm of falling and rising, the rhythm of silence and thunder. Because every story I'd ever lived, every betrayal, every rebuild, had taught me one thing. When a woman learns her worth, the world starts negotiating differently. The rhythm of rising never really stops. It just changes key. That's what I told myself the night I walked onto the stage at the National Business Women's Awards in Atlanta. It was surreal. Chandeliers, velvet drapes, camera flashes bouncing like lightning in a room full of power. When they called my name, Helen Cole, Entrepreneur of the Year, I swear the world slowed. All those years of tears, silence, and grind suddenly made sense. I stood at that podium, looked out at 1,000 faces and said, "Every woman in here has been told to calm down, to tone down, to sit down. I say stand up louder, even if your voice shakes." The applause hit like thunder, but under that sound I heard something softer, my own heartbeat, steady and certain. After the ceremony, a woman in her 50s approached me backstage. She looked familiar. "Helen?" she said gently. It took me a second, but then, "Kara, Mark's old assistant, the one who couldn't look me in the eye when I got fired." "Wow," I said. "Didn't expect to see you here." She smiled nervously. "I left Sherridan Cole right after you did. Started my own HR consultancy. Been following your journey since day one." "Good for you," I said. "You look peaceful." She nodded. "You taught me something that day." I raised an eyebrow. "I didn't even talk to you." "I know," she said. "That's what taught me. Your silence. It wasn't weakness. It was strategy." I didn't have words, just hugged her. Sometimes closure walks up to you wearing a different outfit than you expected. Weeks later, Denise and I were back at the Beechwood Center hosting another mentorship session. This time, the crowd was bigger and younger. High school girls fresh out of college, some mothers still holding toddlers. They asked questions about business, faith, and failure. One girl couldn't have been older than 19, asked, "What do you do when people you love don't believe in you?" I looked at her for a long moment. "You let them doubt you," I said softly, "because doubt is quiet fuel. Just make sure it doesn't become your map." She nodded, wiping her eyes. Afterward, Denise whispered, "You talk like you've been through war." I smiled. "I have. I just fought mine with spreadsheets and grace." The next few months were good, peaceful even. Then the call came. It was from a man named Victor Lane, producer for a streaming platform. He said, "We're creating a docuseries on women entrepreneurs who turned pain into power. We want you as the season finale." My first instinct was no. I'd built a quiet life. No need to reopen wounds for ratings. But then he said something that made me pause. "We're not telling your story. We're letting you tell it." That changed everything. Filming started that summer. They followed me through my office, my childhood church, even Mama's gravesite. Every interview made me remember a version of myself I'd buried. The tired Helen, the grieving Helen, the hopeful one who still prayed when nothing worked. At first it hurt, but somewhere between the tears and retakes, I realized telling my story wasn't reopening wounds, it was teaching someone else how to heal theirs. The day the trailer dropped, it went viral in hours. The clip opened with my voice. He said I was too emotional for management. My coffee went cold before my tears did. That's the day I started buying his building. That line hit the internet like lightning. Hashtags, duets, parodies. Even teenagers lip-synced it with background gospel music. And the comments, Lord, full of women saying things like, "This is my auntie's story. This is the closure I needed. She turned pain into a business plan." I sat on my couch reading every single one, tears running down my face. Because for the first time, I realized I wasn't just Helen Cole anymore. I was proof. The night the full episode aired, we held a small watch party at Beechwood. Friends, family, staff, even Denise brought cupcakes. As the credits rolled, everyone clapped. Then Jada looked at me and said, "Boss, this ain't just a story anymore. It's a movement." I smiled through tears. Then let's build a roadmap for it. And that's how the Silent Strength Initiative was born, a mentorship network connecting women rebuilding after layoffs, divorce, or betrayal. Every woman who signed up got one line printed on her welcome card. Silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. Months passed. The initiative grew across 12 states. News outlets called it a revolution wrapped in grace. But one letter out of thousands stood out to me. It came from Mark's daughter. She wrote, "Ms. Cole, I don't know if you remember my dad. He used to be your boss. He talks about you often, says you taught him more by leaving than anyone did by staying. He's in hospice now, but he asked me to thank you." I read that letter twice, heart pounding. Then I sat down and wrote him back. "Mark, I forgive you, and I thank you, because without your rejection, I wouldn't have found my resurrection. Helen." I never got a reply, but a month later, I got a postcard from his daughter. "He passed peacefully. Your letter was on his nightstand." That night, I drove to Mama's gravesite again. Same candle as always, stillness. "I think I understand now," I whispered. "Why you told me not to fight every battle. Some are meant to turn into bridges." The wind blew soft, like an answer. Later, at home, I found Denise sitting on my porch. She looked up, holding 2 glasses of wine. "To us," she said. "To what?" "To surviving each other." We laughed, clinking glasses. Then she asked, "You ever think about selling all this? Retiring?" I thought for a moment. "No, I think about teaching more. Legacy don't retire, it multiplies." She nodded. "You always got a line ready, huh?" "Poetic justice," I said. "It's good for business." That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time in years. Page 1. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting who hurt you. It means remembering who you became after. I closed it, smiled, and whispered to myself, "This is the life I built out of broken pieces, and I'm not done yet." By the time the documentary premiered worldwide, I had stopped checking numbers. I didn't care about charts or clicks anymore. I cared about impact. But when Jada called screaming at 6:43 a.m., I knew something big had happened. "Boss, you don't understand," she shouted. "Netflix just listed your episode as the #1 trending documentary in the country." I sat there in bed, half asleep, staring at the morning light creeping across my curtains. It hit me like a quiet miracle. The woman who once got fired for being too emotional was now being streamed in 78 countries for having the courage to feel. By noon, my inbox was overflowing. Media offers, collaborations, brand deals. Even Oprah's team reached out for a feature. But what caught my attention wasn't any of that. It was a handwritten letter from a women's prison in Louisiana. "Ms. Cole, I watched your story on the prison TV. You said silence can be strategy. I've been silent for 3 years, learning who I was beyond my mistakes. When I get out, I want to start my own candle line called Redemption Light. Thank you for reminding me that I'm not finished yet. I held that letter to my chest, because that's when it clicked. This story was no longer mine. It belonged to every woman who'd ever been told she was too much, too loud, too emotional, too late. At the office that week, everyone felt the shift. Our orders doubled overnight. Major retailers reached out. We started planning Soulflame's first international store in Ghana. From Beechwood to Accra, Denise said, eyes shining. Mama would be dancing right now. She is, I said. We just learned how to hear her better. Later that month, I was invited to deliver the commencement speech at my alma mater. Standing there looking out at hundreds of graduates, young, nervous, hungry for life, I felt something stir deep inside. I started slow. When I was sitting where you are, I said, I thought success meant climbing a ladder someone else built. But the truth is, some of us are here to build the ladders and name them after the women who raised us. They clapped, loud and long. Then I said, you're going to get hurt, you're going to get doubted. But if you listen close, every no is just an echo telling you to build somewhere else. By the end, half the crowd was crying. And I knew the story had evolved beyond revenge. It was legacy now. Afterward, a young man stopped me in the hallway. Miss Cole, he said shyly, I'm a finance major. My mom loves your candles. She said your story changed how she sees herself. I smiled. Then tell her she already changed the world. Through you. He laughed softly. She said that's exactly the kind of thing you'd say. A few weeks later, Denise and I visited Mama's old church. They'd invited us to light the first Beechwood Legacy candle at the anniversary service. The choir hummed in the background as we stood at the altar, the same one where Mama used to lead prayer. The pastor said, this candle represents every woman who turned pain into power. Denise squeezed my hand. That's you, she whispered. I shook my head gently. That's us. The flame flickered, caught, and glowed steady, like it had been waiting for this moment all along. After the service, an older woman came up to me. Baby, she said, you don't know me, but I know your mama. She used to say, my girl's gonna build something one day that even fire can't burn down. Tears welled in my eyes. She said that? The woman nodded. Every Sunday. I smiled, looking at the flickering candle on the altar. Well, I whispered, looks like she was right. That night, I sat on my porch again. Same cup of tea, same candlelight. Denise sat beside me this time, wrapped in a blanket. Remember when you said peace was the new power? She asked. Yeah. You think you found it? I thought for a moment, watching the flame dance in the wind. I think peace ain't something you find, I said. It's something you build, piece by piece, until your silence starts speaking for you. She nodded slowly. You really became Mama's child. Guess I had to, I said. Somebody had to finish her prayer. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of rain and phone vibrations. Dozens of new notifications, all about a viral clip from my documentary. It wasn't the part about being fired. It was the part where I said, don't curse the storm that uprooted you. It cleared the ground for something bigger. People were stitching it, quoting it, tattooing it. Helen Cole Challenge was trending. Women everywhere sharing how they turned heartbreak into hustle. It wasn't just a movement now. It was a revolution in rhythm and resilience. That same week, I got a surprise package in the mail. Inside was a single candle, white plain with the words Redemption Light on the label. The letter read, Ms. Cole, I got out. My first batch sold out at the re-entry fair. Thank you for believing in someone you never met. I cried so hard I had to sit down, not from sadness, from recognition, because that's what legacy looks like when it starts breathing on its own. That evening, I called Denise. She picked up on the second ring. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing," I said, laughing through tears. "Just wanted to say thank you." "For what?" "For showing me that family can fall apart and still rebuild stronger." She was quiet for a long moment, then said softly, "You taught me that." Before bed, I opened my journal, the same one from years ago, and flipped to the back. Underneath my last entry, I wrote, "Revenge was the spark, but grace was the fire." Then I closed it, because I knew the final chapter was near. Not the end, but the exhale. It's funny how the loudest chapters of your life end in whispers. A year after the documentary, life had slowed down again. Not the kind of slow that feels empty, but the kind that feels earned. The city moved around me, fast and hungry as ever, but my world had rhythm now. Every sound, the hum of candles being poured, the click of keyboards in the office, the laughter of interns in the hallway, felt like music I composed. The chaos that once chased me was now part of my harmony. That morning, I walked into the Soul Flame headquarters with no makeup, no press team, no entourage, just peace. "Morning, Ms. Cole," everyone called out. I waved, smiling. "Morning, y'all. Keep that energy up." Jada followed behind, tablet in hand. "We've got 3 new store openings confirmed: New York, Atlanta, and Accra, and Redemption Light just sold out again." I laughed. "You see, that's purpose reproducing itself." Denise peeked out from her office. "You mean legacy," she corrected, grinning. "Legacy, purpose, same song, different verse," I said. Later, I sat in my office looking at the framed photo on my desk. Me, Mama, and Denise, back when life was still black and white and simple. Mama's eyes were full of that knowing peace, the kind you only earn through struggle. I whispered, "We did it, Mama. Not perfectly, but faithfully." The sunlight hit the glass frame just right, bouncing off and lighting up my candle. Stillness. That's when I realized, maybe that's what success really is. Not applause, not titles, just light, quietly reflecting something greater. That afternoon, I met with a group of young founders at Beechwood. They were nervous, ambitious, and too caffeinated, just like I used to be. One of them, a girl with braids and fire in her eyes, said, "Miss Cole, what's the secret? How do you know when you've made it?" I smiled, leaning back. "When you stop needing to prove that you did." They laughed softly, nodding. "Listen," I continued, "money's fine. Success feels good. But peace? That's the luxury we don't talk about enough. You can't buy it. You gotta build it. With honesty, boundaries, and silence." They wrote it down like scripture. After they left, I sat alone for a while. The building creaked. Old wood. Old stories. Beechwood wasn't just a foundation anymore. It was a breathing organism of second chances. I remembered the day Denise first changed the locks on this place, and the day I changed them back. Now we both held the keys. Literally and spiritually. That's the kind of poetry life writes when you stop interrupting it. That evening, we hosted our annual Soul Flame dinner. All the employees, partners, and local leaders came through. I didn't plan to speak, but when the lights dimmed and everyone looked my way, I stood. "Tonight," I said, "I just want to thank everyone here, not for believing in me, but for believing in us. Because none of this was built by one woman. It was built by 1,000 hearts that refused to quit." Applause echoed. Denise wiped her eyes. I continued. "Some of y'all know my story. Fired, broke, betrayed. But what you might not know is that every single candle you hold in your hand right now, every flame, is a piece of that story. Because what they meant for humiliation turned into illumination." The crowd cheered. Glasses clinked. Someone shouted, "Say that, Aunt Helen!" I laughed. That's right. Aunt Helen always got a word. After dinner, I slipped out to the balcony for some air. The city stretched before me, glowing, alive, beautiful. Denise joined me, holding 2 glasses of wine. "One last toast," she said. "To what?" I asked. She smiled. "To silence. It really was your superpower." I clinked my glass to hers, to silence, and to what it built. We stood there, two women who'd once been at war, now bound by the peace they both fought for differently. The next morning, I woke early and drove to the cemetery. It had become my ritual. I brought fresh flowers and one candle. Legacy. "Morning, Mama," I whispered, kneeling. "Your girls finally learned how to stop surviving and start living." The wind stirred gently, and for a moment I could almost hear her voice again. "I told you, baby, you were never too emotional. You were just too powerful for small minds." A single tear fell, but it wasn't heavy. It was holy. When I got back to the car, I checked my phone. A message notification glowed on the screen. It was from the young woman in Chicago who'd written me years ago. "Ms. Cole, I finally opened my salon. Guess what it's called? Soul Flame Beauty. Thank you for being my blueprint." I smiled, heart full. That's when I knew. I didn't just build a brand. I built belief. That night, I sat by my window, journal in lap. The city lights blinked like stars that had learned to live on the ground. I opened to the last page and wrote, "When I started this journey, I thought revenge was victory, but real victory was peace, the kind that comes when you stop trying to be understood and start living as proof." I closed the book. Then I looked up at the ceiling and whispered, "If you were in my shoes, what would you have done?" I let the silence answer me, and finally, I smiled. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.